Have you ever jolted awake in the middle of the night with the face of someone you've lost burned into your mind, feeling with absolute certainty that they were trying to tell you something urgent, but you couldn't quite grasp it? What if that dream wasn't a coincidence at all, but a message from beyond the grave? Saint Teresa of Avila, the great Spanish mystic of the 16th century, received a revelation that the Church kept shrouded in silence for centuries. In her most intimate writings, those known only to her confessors during her lifetime, Teresa documented something extraordinary: 4 profound and supernatural reasons why the soul of a deceased loved one appears in our dreams. These are not coincidences. Your mind is not playing tricks on you. Saint Teresa made it unmistakably clear. When a departed soul appears in your dreams repeatedly, with unusual intensity, or under specific circumstances, there is a genuine spiritual reason behind that visit, and that reason can completely change how you must respond. Today, you will learn the exact 4 reasons Saint Teresa revealed. But more importantly, you will discover how to identify which one applies to your own experience, what mistakes to avoid when interpreting these dreams, and what final action you can take to help the soul that is reaching out to you from the other side. If you wish for peace for the soul of that beloved one who visits you in dreams, write in the comments, "Saint Teresa, intercede for us." Listen to every word of this video until the very end, because at the close, you will discover the one action Saint Teresa taught for freeing a soul that is searching for you. But you must first understand all 4 reasons and learn to recognize which one is at work in your case. Without that, the action will not have the effect you are seeking. And if this subject touches your heart deeply, show your love for that departed soul by liking this video, and subscribe if you want more souls to find comfort and truce in these sacred mysteries. In the year 1577, locked away in her cell at the convent of St. Joseph in Avila, Saint Teresa of Jesus wrote something her superiors ordered her to keep hidden, not because it was heretical, but because it was too intimate, too unsettling, too close to the unfathomable mystery that divides this world from the next. In those handwritten pages, in her slanted, trembling script, Teresa revealed that God had shown her 4 precise reasons why the souls of the departed crossed the veil of death to appear in the dreams of the living. 4 reasons, no more, no less. 4 deep, supernatural motives, each one weighted with spiritual urgency. And the most unsettling part of all, Teresa wrote that these nighttime visits are not random. They are not the product of grief or longing or a weary mind manufacturing comfort where none exists. They are, in her own words, real interventions from the beyond. Visits permitted by God Himself. Messages that travel across the abyss between time and eternity. But Teresa also issued a warning. She warned that the vast majority of people who experience these dreams fail to understand them. They get confused, they dismiss them, or worse, they misinterpret them in ways that can cause harm both to the living and to the dead. Because not every dream of a departed loved one means the same thing. Not everyone calls for the same response. And if you cannot tell one reason from another, if you don't know the signs that Teresa documented with mystical precision, you may spend years receiving the same message without ever understanding it. Years during which that soul keeps searching for you. Years during which you keep waking with the feeling that something is unfinished, that someone needs you, but you don't know how to help. Picture this scene for a moment. It's the early hours of the morning. You've woken up suddenly for no apparent reason. Your heart is beating faster than it should, and in your mind, still vivid, still sharp, as if it happened just a second ago, is the face of your mother, or your husband, or your child, or that dear friend who passed away years ago. It wasn't one of those vague, blurry dreams that fade the moment you open your eyes. It was clear, real, so real that for an instant you believed that person was right there with you, in the room. You felt their presence. You heard their voice. You saw the expression on their face. And that expression told you something you can't quite put into words, but something that was etched into your soul like an invisible mark. Perhaps they were watching you in silence, their eyes full of sorrow. Perhaps they were pointing at something you couldn't identify. Perhaps they held you close, and you felt a warmth that shouldn't be possible inside a dream. Or perhaps, and this is the most haunting of all, they were asking you for something specific, something urgent. But you woke up before they could say it clearly. And ever since, that dream has stayed with you. You return to it again and again in your mind. You wonder what it meant. You wonder if you should have done something differently. You wonder whether that soul is at peace, whether they're all right, whether they need your help. Saint Teresa understood that anguish. She lived it herself. In her writings, she confessed that for years she received nighttime visits from souls who had passed on. Souls of nuns from her own community, souls of family members, souls of people she had never even known in life, but whom God allowed to appear before her because Teresa possessed the gift of seeing what others could not. And it was precisely that gift, that mystical charism the Church recognized and venerated, that allowed Teresa to decode the hidden meaning behind these encounters. Because these dreams are not all alike. Each one has a different origin. Each one carries a different message. Each one demands a different response. Teresa spent years studying these phenomena. Years of praying, discerning, comparing cases, recording with a theologian's meticulous care every detail that God showed her. And at the end of that long spiritual journey, she arrived at a stunning conclusion. There are exactly 4 reasons why a departed soul can visit you in dreams. 4, and only 4. And if you know those reasons, if you learn to recognize the signs that distinguish one from another, you can finally understand what that soul needs from you. But here is what most people don't know, what the Church doesn't openly teach from the Sunday pulpit, what is rarely mentioned in popular devotional books. These 4 reasons are not merely theological categories. They are not abstract concepts for academic debate. They are living, pulsing realities, charged with eternal consequences. Because depending on which reason lies behind your dream, the soul that visits you may be in a completely different spiritual condition. It may be suffering, it may be at peace, it may be in danger. It may be sent by God Himself as a messenger of consolation or as a warning of mercy. And you, without realizing it, may have been receiving night after night a call you don't understand. A call that, if answered rightly, could change the fate of that soul, could ease its suffering, could speed its entry into heaven, could protect you from spiritual dangers you haven't yet seen. Or, if that call is ignored, misunderstood, or answered in the wrong way, it could prolong that soul's pain, could leave you trapped in an anguish that never ends, could open spiritual doors that should never be opened. Saint Teresa knew this, and so she wrote with urgency. She wrote so that you, centuries later, might understand what she understood, so that you would not walk blindly through this mysterious territory where the living and the dead still meet, if only in the dim light of night. But before revealing the first reason, you need to understand why it took Saint Teresa years to find the courage to write any of this, and why the Church kept these words hidden for centuries. The first reason Saint Teresa revealed is the most widely known, but also the most misunderstood. And it is this: the soul of your loved one comes to you in dreams because it needs you to know something urgent about its current condition. This is not coincidence. This is not your subconscious conjuring comfort. It is a silent plea crossing the boundary of death. Teresa wrote it with breathtaking clarity in her private confessions. There are souls who are given divine permission to appear before the living, because they need something that only the living can provide. And that something, in most cases, has a very specific name: prayer, suffrages, intercessory prayer, prayer that soothes, that consoles, that hastens the journey from purgatory toward the eternal light. But here is what very few people truly grasp. These souls cannot ask for your help in plain words. They cannot appear at your door and say, "I need you to pray for me." They cannot send you a letter from the beyond explaining exactly what to do. The only channel they have, the only window God allows them to open, is the dream. That liminal space where your consciousness relaxes, where the barriers of the material world grow more permeable, where the soul can receive what waking life would reject through disbelief or fear. And so they come. They come in silence. They come with urgency. They come carrying a weight you cannot see, but which they feel with an intensity no living person can imagine. Imagine this. Imagine that your mother, who passed away 5 years ago, is in purgatory. Not in hell, God be thanked, not condemned, but not yet in the fullness of heavenly glory either. She is in that intermediate state that theologians speak of, but so few truly understand. A state of purification, a state where the soul sees with perfect clarity every one of its failings, every disordered attachment, every moment it chose earthly comfort over divine love. And in that state, your mother suffers. Not with physical fire, as some medieval paintings depict, but with something far more painful: the absence of God, the unbearable nearness of His presence, and the inability to embrace it yet. Like standing before the sun without feeling its warmth, like an unquenchable thirst in front of a spring you cannot yet drink from. Teresa described this suffering as an agony of the soul that surpasses any pain the body can endure. And she wrote that these souls, in their purification, are permitted to ask for help, but not from just anyone, only from those who loved them in life, only from those who still remember them, only from those who have the power to offer prayers, masses, and acts of charity on their behalf. And so your mother comes. She comes in your dreams, and she looks at you. She looks at you with those eyes you knew your whole life. But now there is something different in them. A sadness that wasn't there before, a silent plea, an urgency she cannot express in words, because words no longer belong to her world. Perhaps in the dream she points at something, a church, a rosary, a candle, or she simply folds her hands in prayer, or she weeps quietly without sound, with tears that leave no stain but hurt more than any earthly crying. And you wake up. You wake with your heart racing, a heaviness in your chest you cannot explain. You wake with her face imprinted on your memory. And for days, for weeks, you cannot stop thinking about that dream. But you don't know what to do. You don't know whether it was real or just your mind missing her. You don't know whether to act or let it pass. And while you hesitate, while you keep telling yourself it was only a dream, that soul goes on waiting, waiting for the help that only you can give. Saint Teresa warned against this delay. She warned that many souls spend decades in purgatory, not because their sins were so grave, but because no one prays for them, because no one offers a mass in their name, because no one remembers that death does not end our responsibility toward those we love. And the most heartbreaking thing of all, Teresa wrote that when a soul comes to ask for your help in dreams and you ignore that call, the soul cannot simply return. It cannot persist indefinitely. It is granted a limited permission. And if that permission expires without a response, the soul must go on waiting. Waiting until some other person, somewhere, chooses to pray for forgotten souls. Waiting until God's time, which is not our time, finally sets it free. How many times have you had that dream? How many times have you seen your father, your sister, your husband looking at you with an expression you cannot decode? How many times have you woken feeling that something was left unfinished, that someone was asking something of you but you couldn't quite understand? Those are not empty dreams. They are messages encoded in the only language the beyond can use to reach you. And Saint Teresa is telling you now, across the centuries, to pay attention, not to dismiss these visits, to understand that behind that dream there is a real soul with real suffering, awaiting real help that only you can give. But this first reason is only the beginning, because there is a second reason, far more unsettling, and it has to do with something you did in life without realizing it, something left unresolved, something that soul needs you to set right before it can rest in peace. The second reason Saint Teresa revealed is even more troubling than the first, and it is this: the soul of your loved one comes to you in dreams because there is an unresolved bond between you, an invisible debt, something that was left unfinished before they departed, something you promised and never fulfilled, something they promised and can no longer fulfill, or worse still, something that needed to be said and never was. Teresa wrote about this with a clarity that shakes you to the core. She wrote that God, in His infinite mercy, allows certain souls to return in dreams, not only to ask for prayer, but to urgently point to something that was left broken in the relationship, something that, if left unaddressed, can affect not only the departed soul's rest, but your own spiritual peace as well, because human relationships do not end with death. The bonds of love, of family, of friendship, of shared promises, these reach beyond the grave. And when those bonds carry knots that were never untied, words never spoken, forgiveness never given, those knots weigh heavily. They weigh on the soul that parted, and they weigh on the soul that remained. Imagine this. Your husband died 3 years ago. He died suddenly, without time for goodbyes, without time for last words. And between the two of you, something was left hanging. Perhaps an argument that was never resolved. Perhaps a promise he made that he never got to keep. Perhaps a forgiveness you owed him. But that pride or pain or stubbornness kept you from ever offering. And now he comes to you in dreams, often, always with the same expression. Not an expression of physical suffering, but something deeper. A look of pleading, of sadness, of need. Sometimes in the dream he hands you something, an object, a letter, a rosary, a photograph. Something symbolic that your waking mind cannot quite interpret, but that your soul receives in the dream with perfect clarity. Other times he asks you to do something specific, to go somewhere, to speak to someone, to fulfill a promise that was left in the air. And when you wake, you feel a weight on your chest. You feel that something important just happened, but you can't quite name it. You feel he needs something from you, but you don't know how to give it. Teresa explained that these dreams are different from those of the first reason. In the first, the soul asks for prayer. In this second reason, the soul asks for repair. It asks you to close a circle that was left open, to heal a wound that is still bleeding on the spiritual plane. And the most painful part of all, Teresa warned that if this repair is not made, if that forgiveness is not granted, if that promise is not kept, the soul may become stalled in its purification. Not because God punishes it, but because the soul itself cannot move forward. Because something in its now purified consciousness prevents it from taking the next step toward the light. Something that only you can resolve. Let me give you another example. Your mother died when you were young, after years of illness. And during those years, there were moments when you, exhausted and heartbroken from watching her suffer, said things you didn't truly mean, things that weariness dragged out of you. Things like, "I just wish this would end." Things like, "I can't take any more of this." Things she heard, things she forgave in her heart. but that were never healed between you with clear, honest words. And now, years later, she comes to you in dreams. She looks at you with those eyes full of love, but also with something more, a silent question, a need to hear something you never said, a need for you to heal that memory, to close that wound with an explicit forgiveness, even if it is spoken in prayer, even if it is offered in silence before the Blessed Sacrament. Teresa taught that these invisible debts are real as any material debt, and that the love between souls does not end with death. It is purified. And in that purification, what was left unfinished hurts more than it ever did in life. That is why these souls come. That is why they persist. That is why they appear night after night with the same expression, the same gesture, the same silent plea. And you, without fully knowing it, have the power to set them free. You have the power to keep a promise you made years ago and forgot. The power to forgive the unforgivable. The power to ask forgiveness of someone who is gone, but whose soul still listens. How is this done? Saint Teresa explained it with precision. It is done in prayer, by speaking to that soul as though it were present, because in a certain sense, it is. By saying aloud, or in the quiet of your heart, the words that were never spoken. By fulfilling, if at all possible, what you once promised. By offering a Mass for that specific intention. By healing within yourself the memory that still causes pain. And when you do this, something changes. The dreams change. The expression of the departed changes. Or the dreams stop altogether, which is a sign that the soul received what it needed and can now continue its journey. But here is what Saint Teresa warned with the greatest force. Do not confuse this second reason with simple nostalgia. Do not mistake this call for the ordinary psychological process of grief, because there is a clear difference, and that difference lies in the fruit. If after the dream you feel peace, consolation, a sense that something was resolved, then it was likely a natural dream of emotional healing. But if after the dream you feel restlessness, if you sense something is still unfinished, if you feel a pull to act, then you are very likely receiving the second reason, a real call from a real soul asking you to do something specific. Now, if the first two reasons have moved you deeply, prepare yourself, because the third reason Saint Teresa revealed is the most beautiful and the least understood. And when you hear it, you will understand why so many people weep when they remember these dreams. The third reason Saint Teresa revealed is entirely different from the two that came before. And it is this: the soul of your loved one comes to you in dreams not because it needs something from you, but because you need something from it. Because God Himself sends it as a messenger of consolation, of companionship, of peace. It is not the soul that chooses to come. It is God who sends it. Teresa wrote about this with a tenderness rarely found in mystical texts. She wrote that God, in His infinite mercy, knows the pain of those who are left behind. He knows the loneliness of the widow who sleeps alone after 40 years of marriage. He knows the anguish of the mother who lost her child, and who every night wonders whether that child is all right, whether they are at peace, whether they still remember her. He knows the shattering emptiness of the person who lost their lifelong companion, and feels as though a piece of their own soul went with them. And so God, moved by a compassion only He can possess, sends the purified soul like a comforting angel. He sends it to hold you in your dreams, to smile at you, to tell you without words, I am well, I am at peace, I am not suffering, and neither should you. These dreams are completely unlike those of the first two reasons. In these, the departed does not appear sad or distressed. They are not pointing urgently at anything. They are not asking for anything. They are simply there with you. And their very presence fills you with a peace that defies a rational explanation. Picture this. You have spent months devastated by the loss of your husband. Months in which every morning is a fresh reminder that he is gone. Months when the house feels larger, emptier, quieter. Months of crying until there are no tears left. And then one night, when you have nearly lost all hope of ever feeling peace again, he comes. He comes in your dreams, and he is radiant, not with the gaunt appearance of his last days of illness, but young, luminous, full of life. He looks at you with those eyes you loved so dearly. He smiles, and he holds you. And that embrace is unlike any you have ever known. It is not physical, yet you feel it. Deep inside you, you feel his warmth, his love, his peace. And in that embrace, without a single word spoken, you understand everything. You understand that he is all right, that he is no longer suffering, that the love between you did not die. It was purified, elevated, transformed into something stronger than death itself. And when you wake, something has shifted inside you. You do not wake in anguish. You wake in peace, a deep, inexplicable peace with no logical foundation. You simply know, with a certainty that rises from the very depths of your soul, that he is well, and that you will be well too. Saint Teresa explained that these dreams are gifts from God, visits of mercy, proof that true love never dies, it is only transfigured, and that those we have loved do not abandon us, even when they are no longer physically present. They continue to accompany us, to intercede for us, to love us from eternity. But Teresa also taught something crucial. These dreams must not be confused with the appearances of the first two reasons, and here is the key to telling them apart. The dreams of the third reason always leave behind a fruit of peace. They leave consolation, hope, the certainty that all is well. They do not leave restlessness. They do not leave the feeling of an unfinished task. They do not leave anxiety. If after dreaming of your loved one you wake with a deep sense of peace, with a smile on your lips despite the grief you still carry, with the feeling of having been embraced by heaven itself, then you have most likely received this kind of visit, a visit of consolation, a visit sent by God to remind you that you are not alone. Teresa wrote that these visits are especially common on meaningful dates, on the anniversary of the dead, on birthdays, at Christmas, when the weight of absence is sharpest, in moments of crisis, when the pain becomes unbearable. It is as though God knows exactly when your heart is most broken and sends that loved one to remind you that love is stronger than death. And the most beautiful thing of all, Teresa explained that when a soul is sent in this way, it does not only bring comfort to you, it also receives comfort in return, because the love they shared with you in life did not disappear. It became an eternal bond, now purer, more elevated, closer to the way God designed love from the very beginning. That is why so many people weep when they recall these dreams, not from sadness, but from gratitude. They weep because they felt, even for a moment, the reality of heaven. They weep because they knew, beyond all doubt, that they will be reunited one day with that beloved soul. They weep because they experienced firsthand what faith teaches, but few ever truly feel, that death does not have the final word. But Teresa also issued an important caution. She warned that we must not seek these dreams. We must not force them. We must not fall into the temptation of turning to mediums, spiritualists, or forbidden rituals in an attempt to provoke these visits, because that is no longer faith. That is idolatry. That is opening doors that must never be opened. These dreams are gifts, and gifts are not demanded. They are received with gratitude when they come. And when they don't come, we trust that God knows what is best for us. Now, if this third reason has filled you with hope, prepare yourself, because there is a fourth reason, and this one is the most delicate, the most misunderstood, and the most essential to know, because it touches on something very few people dare to consider: the possibility that not everything appearing in our dreams comes from God. The fourth reason. The fourth reason Saint Teresa revealed is the hardest to accept, the most uncomfortable, the one most people would rather ignore, because it forces us to confront something we don't want to admit. And it is this: the soul of your loved one comes to you in dreams to warn you about a spiritual danger in your present life, a wrong path you are taking, a relationship drawing you away from God, a sin you have normalized, a decision you need to reconsider. This is not judgment. It is not condemnation. It is protective love reaching across the veil. Teresa wrote about this with a mixture of firmness and tenderness. She wrote that God, in His infinite mercy, allows certain souls to return, not only to ask for help or to offer consolation, but to warn, to cry out from the other side of the veil: stop. Look at what you are doing. Look at where you are heading. Change course before it is too late. These souls come because they love you. They come because from their purified state, they can see with clarity what you cannot. They see the eternal consequences of choices that seem insignificant to you. They see the spiritual dangers you have stopped noticing because you have grown used to them. They see the cracks in your soul that are still repairable, but which, left unattended, will become chasms. And God, moved by the love between you, permits them to come, permits them to warn you, permits them to point with urgency to what you need to change. But these dreams are different, very different. In these dreams, the departed does not appear at peace. They appear worried. They appear with an expression of deep sorrow. Sometimes they are weeping. Sometimes they point directly at something specific in your life, a person, a place, a decision. Sometimes they shake their head as if to say, "No, don't do that." Sometimes they try to steer you away from something or someone. And when you wake, you do not feel peace. You feel unsettled, a discomfort you can't explain, a nagging sense that something in your life is not right, but you don't want to face it. A feeling that the dream was pointing at something you would rather not see. Let me give you a concrete example. You have started a relationship with someone who seems kind, thoughtful, attentive, but you've noticed something, even if you keep dismissing it. This person is slowly drawing you away from your faith, telling you that you don't really need to go to Mass every Sunday, suggesting that certain teachings of the church are outdated, saying that God understands, that it doesn't matter, that religion is just cultural tradition. And you, because you are lonely, because you long for companionship, because the pain of widowhood still runs deep, you begin to give ground. You start skipping Mass. You begin to drift from your friends at the parish. You start making excuses for things you once would never have excused. And then one night, your late husband appears in your dreams, and he looks at you, and in his expression there is a grief you never saw in him while he was alive. He points to that person, or he simply shakes his head, or he takes your hand and tries to pull you away. And when you wake, you know, deep in your heart, you know. That dream was not random. It was a warning from someone who loves you so deeply that God allowed him to cross the veil just to tell you, be careful, don't go down that road, come back. Saint Teresa explained that these warnings are acts of divine mercy. They are not punishments. They are not threats. They are last-minute opportunities for correction before the damage becomes irreversible, calls to turn back before you cross a point of no return. And most importantly, Teresa taught how to distinguish these warnings from ordinary fears or psychological projections. The key lies in the fruit. If after the dream you feel deep conviction, a clear call to change something specific in your life, a sense that God is speaking to you through that dream, then it is very likely a genuine warning. But if after the dream you feel only vague guilt, generalized fear, or confusion without clear direction, then it may simply be your own restless conscience, or even, and this is crucial, a false apparition. Because here is what Saint Teresa warned most strongly. Not everything that appears to be a departed loved one in a dream truly is. There is a spiritual enemy who can also disguise himself, who can also appear in dreams wearing the face of someone you love, and who does so not to help you, but to confuse you, paralyze you, and lead you away from God. Teresa wrote that the devil is capable of imitating the appearance of the dead, but he cannot imitate the fruit. The fruit of God is always peace, clarity, love, and the strength to change. The fruit of the enemy is always confusion, paralyzing fear, despair, or temptation dressed up as consolation. This is why discernment matters so deeply. Simply having these dreams is not enough. You have to interpret them correctly. You have to know the signs Teresa documented with mystical precision. And here is one of the clearest signs of all. If in the dream the departed asks you to do something that goes against the faith, against Catholic moral teaching, against the doctrine of the Church, then it is not to your loved one. It is a trap. Because souls in heaven or purgatory will never, ever ask you to do something that offends God. If the departed says to you, stop praying, you don't need that. If they tell you to seek answers in tarot cards, mediums, or forbidden practices, if they urge you to take revenge on someone who wronged them, if they say things that contradict what that person believed in life, then it is not your loved one, it is the enemy in disguise. But if the departed points to something in your life that you know, deep in your conscience, is wrong, if they silently invite you to return to prayer, to confession, to Mass, if they show concern for decisions you yourself have privately doubted, then this is very likely a genuine warning, a warning born of love, a warning that could save you. And now, having learned all 4 reasons Saint Teresa revealed, you arrive at what no one has explained to you. How to know which of these 4 reasons corresponds exactly to your dream. Because not all dreams are alike, and confusing them can completely change what you must do next. When the reasons intertwine. Now you know the 4 reasons Saint Teresa revealed. But here is what very few people understand. These reasons do not always appear in isolation. They do not always come neatly separated. In the reality of mystical dreams, on that blurred frontier between heaven and earth, the 4 reasons can weave together, overlap, and appear simultaneously in a single dream, charged with multiple messages. And this is what leaves most people bewildered. They have a powerful dream of a deceased loved one. They know it was significant. They feel it carries meaning, but they don't know what that meaning is, because the dream contained mixed signals. The departed seemed both sorrowful and smiling, both pointing at something and embracing them, both at peace and urgently present. What does that mean? Which of the 4 reasons is it? How can you know what you are supposed to do? Saint Teresa faced this exact question, and in her private writings, those known only to her spiritual directors, she left a map for discernment, a map for understanding how these reasons intertwine and how to recognize which one is dominant in any given case. First, Teresa taught this. When a dream combines the first and second reason, when the soul comes asking for prayer but also pointing to something unresolved between you, the clearest sign is that the departed fixes their gaze on you. They are not simply present. They look at you. They hold your gaze. And in that gaze, there are 2 things at once, pleading and pointing. It is as though the soul is saying, yes, I need your prayers, but I also need you to address what we left unfinished. Both things, You cannot do one and forget the other, because my peace depends on both, and so does yours. In these cases, Teresa advised doing two things in a specific order. First, offer masses and prayers for that soul. Second, once that is done, search your memory for what was left unresolved, what promise went unkept, what forgiveness was never granted, and resolve it in prayer, speaking to that soul as though it were present, because in some sense it is. Second, when a dream combines the first and third reason, when the soul comes asking for prayer but also bringing consolation, the sign is different. In these dreams, the departed first appears with an expression of need, but then, within the same dream, something shifts. They smile, they hold you close, they give you peace. It is as though the soul is saying, yes, I need your prayers, but I also want you to know that I am all right. Please don't grieve so much for me. I am on my way to heaven. Your prayers help me, and I want to help you in return by giving you this peace. These dreams are especially common in people who have prayed faithfully for the departed. It is as though the soul comes to give thanks for those prayers, while asking that they continue until it reaches its eternal rest. Third, when a dream combines the second and fourth reason, when the soul points to something unresolved but also warns about your present life, the sign is this. The departed points to two things. First, something from the past, something left unhealed between you. Then something in the present, something in your life right now that needs to change. And Teresa explained why this happens. Because the mistake you are making today often has its roots in something left unhealed from the past. For instance, you carried resentment towards someone who hurt you, and that resentment was never resolved before your loved one died. And now, that same unresolved resentment is causing you to make errors in the present, to drift from God, to damage other relationships. The soul is telling you, heal the past first, forgive, free yourself, and then you will be able to see clearly what needs to change in the present. Fourth, when a dream combines the third and fourth reason, when the soul brings consolation but also a warning, the sign is subtle but clear. In these dreams, the departed holds you close and gives you peace, but then takes your hand and leads you somewhere, away from something or toward something. It is consolation with direction, peace that moves you to action. It is as though the soul is saying, I am at peace, and I want you to be at peace too. But for you to truly be at peace, you need to step away from what is harming you. You need to return to what you have been neglecting. I love you too much to let you walk toward danger without warning you. And finally, Teresa taught something that changes everything. Sometimes in a single dream, all four reasons appear at once. And when that happens, it is a sign that you are at a crucial turning point in your spiritual life. A moment in which God is permitting an extraordinary intervention, because what is at stake is your eternal salvation. In these dreams, the departed appears with a complex expression, sorrowful for their own condition, pointing to something unresolved between you, but also smiling to offer you comfort, and at the same time, showing deep concern for your present life. It is a dream that is layered, intense, impossible to forget. And Saint Teresa warned, if you have a dream like this, do not ignore it. Do not postpone it. Act immediately, because it is an urgent call from heaven, a call that can change not only the fate of that soul, but your own as well. Now here is the question everyone asks. How can I know with certainty which reason corresponds to my dream? How can I be sure I'm not getting the interpretation wrong? Saint Teresa left clear criteria, and those criteria are connected to something most people get wrong when they receive these dreams: mistakes. Serious mistakes that can leave a soul trapped, open you up to spiritual deception, and pull you further from God rather than closer. These are exactly what you need to understand next. The 5 mistakes to avoid. Saint Teresa warned that knowing the 4 reasons is not enough, because most people, even those with the right knowledge, make serious mistakes when interpreting these dreams. Mistakes that not only prevent them from helping the soul, but that can cause profound spiritual harm to both the living and the departed. These are the 5 most common and most dangerous errors. The first mistake: dismissing the dream as purely psychological. This is the most widespread error in our time. We live in an age that reduces everything to the mind, to emotions, to brain chemistry. And so when someone has a powerful dream of a deceased loved one, the first reaction is, it's my grief, my subconscious processing the loss. It doesn't mean anything supernatural, and sometimes that's true. Some dreams are exactly that. But Saint Teresa warned that this automatic reflex, this immediate rejection of the supernatural, is dangerous because it can lead you to ignore a real call, an urgent call from a soul that needs your help. Teresa taught that when you have doubts, the answer is not to dismiss the dream. The answer is to act as though it were real, because if it was only psychological, you lose nothing by offering a prayer for that soul. But if it was real and you ignore it, you lose the chance to help someone you love. You lose the chance to close a circle that God was giving you the opportunity to close. The second mistake: turning to mediums or forbidden practices to contact the deceased. This mistake is devastating and increasingly common. Someone has a disturbing dream about a loved one, doesn't understand what it means, wants clear answers, and in desperation turns to a medium, a card reader, a seance, or some form of occult practice that promises to connect them with the beyond. Saint Teresa was categorical about this. These practices do not connect you with your loved one. They connect you with demons in disguise, because the spiritual enemy is expert at imitating voices and appearances, at mixing truths with lies to earn your trust and then destroy you. And the worst of it, when you turn to these practices, you don't only harm yourself, you harm the soul of the departed as well. Instead of offering prayers, masses, and acts of charity that genuinely help them, you offer rituals that insult them. Rituals that invoke dark forces in their name. Rituals that can spiritually bind the departed to places they should not be. Teresa advised that if you need clarity about a dream, the only safe place to seek it is within the church, in prayer, in spiritual direction with a well-formed priest, in the Eucharist, in the sacrament of reconciliation. Never under any circumstances in esoteric practices that the church forbids for very serious reasons. The third mistake: becoming obsessed with the dream to the point of superstition. This error is more subtle, but equally dangerous. Someone has a powerful dream of a departed loved one, and that dream becomes the center of their life. They begin looking for signs in everything, interpreting every small detail, growing afraid to make decisions without first waiting for the departed to appear in dreams to approve or disapprove. And little by little, without noticing, that person stops trusting in God, stops trusting in their own capacity for discernment, and begins to trust only in the dreams, begins to live in dependence on them, waiting for them, trying to force them, turning them into a kind of personal oracle. Saint Teresa warned that this is idolatry, because the object of our faith is not dreams, not the dead. It is God. Dreams are tools God may choose to use, yes, but they are not God. And when we make them central, when we elevate them above prayer, above the Mass, above the Word of God, we are committing a grave error. The fourth mistake: not praying immediately after the dream. This mistake may seem minor, but its consequences run deep. Teresa taught that when you have a dream of a departed soul, especially one you suspect may be one of the 4 reasons, the very first thing you must do upon waking is pray. Pray for that soul. Offer an Our Father, a Hail Mary, an eternal rest, immediately. Why? Because the moment right after the dream is when the spiritual connection is freshest. When your soul is still in that liminal space between sleep and waking. When your prayer has the greatest power to reach the soul that visited you. But most people don't do this. They wake up. They think about the dream, they analyze it. Perhaps they mention it to someone. And hours, days, weeks pass without a single prayer being offered. The urgency fades. The connection is lost. The opportunity slips away. The 5th mistake, perhaps the most painful of all, sharing the dream with the wrong people who then ridicule the experience. This mistake may not seem serious, but it can shatter your faith. Imagine this. You have had a profoundly moving dream of your late mother. A dream that left you at peace. A dream that felt utterly real. A dream that touched your soul in ways you cannot explain. And then, with the innocent openness of someone wanting to share something beautiful, you tell someone close to you, a child, a friend, a family member. And that person, with the casual arrogance of modern skepticism, says, "Mom, they're just dreams. It doesn't mean anything. It's your brain processing grief." Don't read too much into it. And even though you try to defend your experience, the doubt begins to creep in. You start to second-guess yourself. You think maybe they're right. Maybe I'm making too much of this. Maybe it was nothing. And just like that, little by little, you allow others to destroy something sacred that God gave you. You allow someone else's unbelief to snuff out the spark of faith that dream ignited in you. Teresa warned about this. She warned that not everyone is ready to hear about mystical experiences, that there are people who, because of their own skepticism, their own distance from God, simply cannot understand these things, and that sharing with them is like casting pearls before swine. Not because those people are wicked, but because they simply lack the spiritual eyes to see. That is why Teresa advised, if you receive these dreams, treasure them in your heart. Share them only with people of deep faith, with a spiritual director, with a priest, with someone who will not mock you, but will help you to discern. These 5 mistakes are real, and their consequences are real too. But now that you know them, you can avoid them. You can respond correctly to the dreams you receive. You can help the soul that visits you, and you can protect yourself from deception and confusion. But there is something more you need to know. Something Teresa documented with astonishing precision. There are patterns that repeat themselves in these dreams. Patterns of dates, objects, settings, and actions. And when you discover these patterns, you will see that your own dreams fit them perfectly. The patterns. Saint Teresa did not only identify the 4 reasons why souls visit in dreams, she also documented something extraordinary: patterns. Patterns that repeat again and again in these mystical encounters. Patterns of dates, of objects, of places, of actions. And the most astonishing thing of all, these patterns are universal. They repeat across different eras, different places, different cultures, as though there were a hidden language of the beyond, one that souls use to communicate with us. And when you learn to recognize these patterns, something shifts. Suddenly those dreams that seem confusing begin to make sense. Suddenly those signals you couldn't decode become as clear as day. Suddenly you realize you weren't imagining things. You weren't overreacting. There really was a message there, encoded in symbols you can now read. The first pattern, dates. Saint Teresa observed that these dreams do not occur randomly. They happen on specific dates that carry spiritual meaning. The most common is the anniversary of the death, especially in the first years after the passing. It is as though the soul knows exactly when another year has turned since their departure and comes to remind you, don't forget me. I still need your prayers. Or, I am still with you. Or, there is still something between us that needs to be resolved. The second most common date is the departed's birthday. That day you once used to celebrate their life. The day that now feels hollow without them. And right on that day, in the midst of your longing, the soul comes, as if to say, I still exist. I am still myself. Death did not erase me, it only transformed me. The third significant date is more subtle but equally powerful. Major religious feasts, Christmas, Holy Week, All Saints' Day, All Souls' Day. Dates when the veil between this world and the next grows thinner. Dates when the Church prays for souls, and souls respond, coming in dreams on those very days, as though they know the time is right to make contact. And there is a fourth date Teresa documented. Moments of crisis in your life, when you are going through something difficult, when you have lost your direction, when you face an important decision. Right at those moments the departed appears, not by chance, but because from the other side they can see that you are in danger, that you need guidance, consolation, or a warning. The second pattern, objects. In these dreams, certain objects appear again and again, and each one carries meaning. The rosary is the most common. When the departed hands you a rosary or points to one or appears praying with one, the message is clear. Pray for me. Offer rosaries for my soul. This connects directly with the first reason, the soul asking for intercession. Candles are another recurring symbol. When the departed appears holding a lit candle or asks you to light one, it signals spiritual light. It may mean the soul is advancing toward the light of heaven, or that it needs more prayers to continue that journey, or that you yourself need spiritual light in your own life. Photographs appear when memory is at the heart of the message. When the departed shows you a photo in the dream, especially one of the two of you together, they are pointing to a specific memory, something that happened in that captured moment, something left unresolved, something you need to recall in order to understand what the soul is asking of you. Clothing is another fascinating pattern. Saint Teresa noticed that the clothing a departed soul wears carries meaning. White or luminous clothing signals advanced purification or arrival in heaven. The soul has come as God's messenger. Dark or stained clothing signals ongoing purification and a need for more prayer. And if the departed appears in clothing you recognize clearly from their lifetime, they are activating your memory. They are saying, remember who I was, remember what we shared, remember what was left unfinished between us. The third pattern, settings. These dreams do not unfold in random places. They take place in locations with emotional or spiritual weight. The most common is the home where the departed once lived, particularly the bedroom, the kitchen, the garden they tended. When the dream occurs in these places, the soul is bringing you back to a shared space, a space where you can meet again, a space that still carries the memory of their presence. Churches are another common setting. When the departed appears in a church or leads you toward one, the message is unmistakable. I need you to go to church. I need you to offer a mass for me. Or, you need to return to mass because you have been drifting away. A church in a dream is always a call to the sacred, to the eternal, to prayer. Paths appear when decisions are at stake. The departed shows you a road. Sometimes they take your hand and walk you along it. Sometimes they point the direction you should go. Sometimes they block a path and show you a different one. These dreams connect with the fourth reason, the warning. The soul is guiding you, saying, this way yes, that way no. The fourth pattern, actions. What the departed does in the dream is never random. Every action carries meaning. If they embrace you, it is pure consolation, the third reason. If they watch you in silence without speaking, it is a plea, the first reason. If they point to something or someone, it is a warning or a sign of something unresolved, the second or fourth reason. If they weep, it is an expression of current suffering or sorrow over something you are doing. If they smile, it signals peace, confirmation that they are well, or approval of something in your life. And there is one action Teresa considered especially significant: when the departed takes your hand. This simple gesture carries extraordinary depth because the hand is contact, connection, mutual support. When the departed takes your hand in a dream, they are saying, "We are in this together. You help me with your prayers. I help you with my intercession. We are companions on the road to eternity." Saint Teresa documented dozens of these patterns, and she taught that when you begin to recognize them, when you begin to see them in your own dreams, something profound changes in your understanding. You are no longer lost. You are no longer confused. You have a map, a language, the ability to read what the soul is telling you. But knowing the patterns is not enough, because these dreams demand a response. They demand action. And Teresa taught that there are specific things you can do before sleep to prepare your soul, to increase the possibility that if these dreams come, they will bring true peace, to open your spirit to God's will. And those preparations must be done in a specific order. Preparing the soul before sleep. Equally important is how to prepare the soul before sleep, so that if God permits a visit, your spirit is receptive, protected, and oriented toward truth. Because it is not enough simply to have these dreams. They must be received in a state of grace, with a clean soul, under God's protection. Otherwise, as we have already seen, what appears may not be your loved one at all, but something wearing their face. What her biographers called Teresa's night ritual was not a magical rite. It was not a formula for forcing apparitions. It was simply a series of straightforward, deeply Catholic practices that prepared the soul for rest and for whatever spiritual encounter God might permit through the night. The first practice: never go to bed carrying resentment or fear. Teresa repeated this constantly to her nuns. She wrote it in her letters. She taught it firmly. She said that the state of the soul at the moment of sleep determines the quality of dreams. If you go to bed with a heart full of anger, bitterness, or resentment towards someone, your soul is not at rest. And a soul without rest cannot discern correctly, cannot receive correctly, cannot tell the difference between what comes from God and what comes from the enemy. So before sleep, Teresa advised a brief examination of conscience. Review the day. Notice whether anything has left your heart unsettled, a harsh word you said, an offense you received that still stings, a conflict left unresolved, and if you find something, resolve it in prayer. Forgive in your heart whoever hurt you. Ask God's forgiveness for whatever you did wrong, and only then, with a clean heart, allow yourself to sleep. The second practice: sleep with a sacred image under the pillow or near the bed. But here is something crucial that Teresa specified. Not the image of the departed, the image of Christ, or of the Virgin Mary, or of your patron saint. Never a photograph of the deceased loved one. Why? Because sleeping with the image of the departed can create an unhealthy emotional dependency. It can lead your mind to manufacture dreams that are not real. It can open spiritual doors that should remain closed. Teresa warned that our nighttime devotion must be directed toward God, not toward the dead. The dead are in God's hands. We must be in His hands too. And the surest way to ensure this is to sleep under the protection of sacred images that remind us to whom we belong. The third practice: Pray specific prayers of protection before sleep. Teresa had her favorites. The first was Psalm 91, the Psalm of Protection. She recited it in full every night, especially the verses that speak of God sending His angels to guard you in all your ways. Because the night, Teresa taught, is territory of spiritual warfare. It is when the enemy works with greatest intensity, and you need angelic protection to pass through it in peace. The second prayer she recommended was a brief but powerful prayer directed to the souls in Purgatory. Something like, "Holy souls of Purgatory, if God permits any of you to visit me tonight in dreams, come in peace. Come under the divine will. And if my loved one needs my prayers, let me know it with clarity." This prayer serves two purposes. First, it opens your spirit to the possibility of receiving holy visits. Second, it establishes clear spiritual boundaries, only under God's will, only in peace, not whatever may wish to enter. The fourth practice, light a candle before bed and offer it for the soul of the departed. Teresa did this especially on anniversaries and significant dates. But always with care, the candle must be in a safe place where it poses no fire risk and must be extinguished before deep sleep. A candle is not magic. It is a symbol, a visible prayer, a way of saying to the departed and to God, "I remember. I have not forgotten. I am still praying." And while the candle burns, Teresa advised praying an eternal rest, or a full rosary if time allows, or simply sitting in silence, offering those few quiet minutes as a spiritual gift for the soul you love, and who may still be in need of your help. The fifth practice, perform an act of charity that day in the name of the departed. Teresa taught that prayers are powerful, yes, but prayers accompanied by works are more powerful still. That is why she advised, if you are hoping or longing for a dream of your loved one, do something concrete that day for someone in need. Give food to the poor. Visit someone who is ill. Help someone who is suffering. And as you do it, say in your heart, "Lord, I offer this for the soul of my mother, my husband, my child. May this work of mercy ease their purification and speed their entry into heaven." The sixth practice, go to confession regularly. Teresa insisted on this. You cannot ask for spiritual clarity while your soul is burdened with unconfessed sin. You cannot expect to discern correctly when your conscience is in darkness. So if you are receiving dreams of the departed, if you are trying to understand what they mean, your first step must be to approach the sacrament of reconciliation. Confess, receive absolution, and then, with your soul cleansed, your capacity for discernment will be multiplied many times over. The seventh and final practice, avoid going to bed with worldly entertainment filling your mind. Teresa warned that the last thing you see before sleep has a profound effect on your dreams. If the last thing you do before bed is watch violent television, programs full of immorality, or engage in aimless mundane conversation, your mind will carry all of that into sleep. And in the midst of that spiritual noise, it becomes very difficult to receive a clear message from beyond. That is why she advised spending the final minutes before sleep in silence, or in gentle spiritual reading, or in quiet prayer, something that settles the soul, something that opens it to the presence of God. These 7 practices may seem simple, and they are. But Teresa warned that their simplicity should not be mistaken for weakness. They are powerful practices. Practices that have worked for centuries. Practices that prepare the spiritual ground so that if God wills it, you can receive holy visits, clear messages, and true consolation. But everything you have heard up to this point has a final destination, because Saint Teresa did not reveal the 4 reasons simply for you to know them. She did not document the patterns simply for you to identify them. She did not teach these nighttime practices simply for you to follow them. All of this has a purpose, And that purpose is to lead you to an action, the most powerful action you can take for the soul that visits you in dreams. The most powerful action. Now you know the 4 reasons, the patterns, the nighttime practices, but all of this, all the wisdom Saint Teresa accumulated through years of mystical experience, converges on a single destination, a final action, an action that closes the circle, an action that can change the eternal destiny of the soul that searches for you in dreams. And this is the action that very few people know, the one rarely mentioned from the pulpit, the one most Catholics have never been taught, but the one that Saint Teresa considered the single most powerful work of mercy you can perform for a departed soul. This action has a name, the Gregorian Mass, and it has a deep theological foundation reaching back to the earliest centuries of the Church. It consists of offering 30 consecutive Masses for the soul of a departed person, 30 days in a row without interruption, 1 Mass each day for an entire month, offered specifically and exclusively for that one soul in need of help. Saint Teresa wrote that this practice carries extraordinary power, not because the Masses are magical, not because there is any mystical significance in the number 30, but because it represents something God values profoundly: constancy, faithfulness, persistent love that does not grow weary, love that does not forget after 3 days, love that holds firm for an entire month, remembering each day the beloved soul who has departed. And according to the tradition Teresa knew and taught, God shows particular mercy to souls for whom these 30 Masses are offered. Many saints and mystics have testified that souls for whom Gregorian Masses were celebrated were released from purgatory by the end of those 30 days. Not always, not automatically, but often enough that the Church has maintained this practice for centuries. But here is what most people don't realize. This action is not only for the immediate aftermath of someone's death. It is also for when you receive recurring dreams from a loved one who died years ago, because those dreams may be a sign that the soul is still being purified, still in need of prayers, and you can, at any point, choose to offer these 30 Masses. Even if 5, 10, or 20 years have passed since their death. How is it done? It is simpler than it sounds. You go to your parish priest. You explain that you wish to offer Gregorian Masses for the soul of your loved one. You leave the customary offering, whatever the parish normally asks for a Mass intention, and the priest commits to celebrating that Mass for 30 consecutive days with that specific intention. You do not need to attend every Mass yourself, though it would be a beautiful thing if you could, but it is not required. What matters is that the Masses are celebrated, that the sacrifice of Christ on Calvary, made present anew on the altar each day, is applied specifically to the soul of your loved one, that the blood of Christ, shed once and for all, washes and purifies that soul you love so dearly. And Saint Teresa taught that when you take this step, when you make the decision to offer these 30 Masses, something changes. The dreams change. Sometimes they stop altogether, which is a sign that the soul received what it needed and can now rest. Sometimes they continue, but the expression of the departed is different, no longer anguished, now at peace, grateful, smiling, as if to say, "Thank you. I can continue my journey now." But the Gregorian Mass is not the only powerful action. Teresa also taught 3 others that can complement it, or serve as alternatives for those who do not have easy access to 30 consecutive Masses. The second action: entrust the departed soul at every Eucharist for 30 days. This means you personally attend Mass each day for a month, and in the moment of the consecration, when the priest elevates the host, you say in your heart, "Lord, apply this sacrifice to the soul of my mother, my husband, my child. May your precious blood purify them. May your body, offered up, nourish them on their journey toward you. This practice asks more of you than the first. It requires your presence, your time, your effort. But precisely because of that, it carries a special power. Because you are not only offering masses, you are offering your life, 30 days of your calendar, 30 days of rising early or rearranging your schedule, 30 days of placing God and that soul above everything else. The third action: make a continuing pledge of charity in the name of the departed. This means committing to a specific work of mercy, carried out regularly, always offered in memory of your loved one. For example, every week, visiting someone who is ill and saying, "Lord, I offer this visit for the soul of my husband." Or every month, giving to those in need and saying, "Lord, I give this in the name of my mother. May it ease her purification as I ease the suffering of those around me." Teresa taught that these pledges of ongoing charity have a cumulative effect. Month after month, year after year, you are building up spiritual merit that God applies to the soul of the departed. You are transforming your pain into action, your longing into concrete love, your helplessness in the face of death into spiritual power that crosses the veil. The fourth action, the most intimate of all: write a spiritual letter to the departed, not to send, obviously, to offer in prayer. Write everything that was never said. Ask forgiveness for what you did wrong. Grant forgiveness for what was done to you. Tell them how much you love them, how deeply you miss them, how much you long for them to be at peace. And when you have finished that letter, do not keep it. Take it to church. Place it before the Blessed Sacrament, and in silence, with your heart open, offer it to God, saying, "Lord, you know my heart. You know the soul of my loved one. Receive these words I could not say in life. And if it is your will, let that soul know what I have written here. Let this bring peace to that soul and to mine." These four actions are the ones Saint Teresa considered most powerful. And she taught that you do not have to do all four. You do not even have to do one, because the salvation of that soul rests in God's hands, not yours. But if you love that soul, if the dreams have shown you that it still reaches out for you, then you have options, you have tools, you have concrete, meaningful ways to help. And when you use them, when you act, something profound shifts, not only in the beyond, but within you. Because you cease to be a passive victim of grief. You cease to be a helpless spectator of death. You become a co-worker in divine mercy, a channel of grace, a bridge between heaven and earth. Closing. Saint Teresa of Avila, in the last years of her life, wrote something that moves people to tears. She wrote it in a private letter to one of her spiritual daughters who had just lost her mother. And these were her words: "She who tends with love and faith to the dreams of souls never walks alone, not in this life, nor in the next. Never walks alone. Because when you help a soul in purgatory, when you answer its call, offer masses, prayers, and acts of charity in its name, you are weaving an eternal bond, a bond that does not end when that soul enters heaven. On the contrary, it deepens. Because that soul, now purified and in the presence of God, becomes your intercessor, your protector, your unseen companion, who from heaven watches over you, prays for you, and walks beside you in every step of your journey. And when your own hour comes, when you yourself cross the veil, that soul will be waiting for you, not to collect a debt, but to welcome you, to thank you, to take you gently by the hand and lead you toward the light you now share. That is why what you have learned today is not merely information. It is an invitation to live your relationship with those who have gone in an entirely different way. An invitation to understand that death is not the end of love, only its purification. An invitation to become an instrument of divine mercy for souls that are still waiting. If you have had these dreams, if you have felt the presence of a loved one who has passed, you no longer need to feel lost. You know what they mean. You know how to read them. You know what to do. And above all, you know that you are not alone. That soul reaches out to you because it loves you. God permits these encounters because He loves you, and you have the power to do something beautiful, something eternal with this experience. Do not let more time pass. Do not put off what your heart already knows needs to be done. Offer that Mass. Pray that rosary. Perform that act of charity. Write that letter, because every day that passes is one more day that soul waits, and you can be the answer to its waiting. Saint Teresa walks with you on this path. The Virgin Mary intercedes for you and for your loved one, and God, in His infinite mercy, is waiting for you to answer love's call with love. If this message has touched your heart deeply, I invite you to watch this next video, where Saint Teresa reveals the most powerful prayers you can pray for the souls in purgatory. Prayers she herself used, prayers that changed the eternal destiny of many souls. May the peace of Christ be with you. May the holy souls of purgatory accompany you.